Hey, boys and girls, welcome back to another edition of Think Different Television. All right, we're going to do the Pythagorean theorem today. Ooh, and it's converse. We're going to do that later. So, why would you need a Pythagorean theorem? What does that have to do with anything? Well, it has to do with all sorts of right triangles. And here's an interesting way you can use it if you're going to blow up a big snowman in your yard and you need to figure out how far to tether the straps. There you go, right there. And there's a right triangle it makes. Wonderful. Or if you want any other thing that's blown up in your yard, there you go. So here's the Pythagorean theorem right here. Pause the video and write this down. Cool. All right, here's what I got. So here's how I titled my paper, Pythagorean theorem. In a right triangle, the sum of the squares of the lengths of the legs is equal to the square of the length of the hypotenuse. Okay? So that's all that stuff. So the important thing to remember about Pythagorean theorem, I'm going to explain what that means right now, is that it has to do with right triangles. So it has to have a right angle. If it doesn't have a right angle, can't use Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so opposite the right angle is called the hypotenuse. You want to do a little note to yourself, opposite right angle. Opposite just means like a cross, like you could draw a line to it, bam. It's called the hypotenuse, opposite the right angle. And these two sides that make up the right angle, right? So these two sides make up the right angle. These are called the legs. Leg and leg. So opposite the 90-degree angle is called the hypotenuse, and then the two sides that make up the right angle are called the legs. So if you're doing, draw this with me. Everything I write, you write. So if you have a right triangle here, the two legs are called A and B. It doesn't matter which one's A or B, so this could be B, this could be A, it doesn't matter. So the two legs are A and B, and the hypotenuse is always C. And the Pythagorean theorem is the sum of the squares of the lengths of the legs. So that means that A squared, so take this number, whatever it is, 5, 6, 7.1, square it, plus B squared equals the hypotenuse squared. So that this is the Pythagorean theorem right there. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Very, very famous, and we're going to use it a lot in geometry. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, let's look here. Example 1, write that down. Copy it down. Okay, so first thing you do whenever you see this, you have to identify what are the parts. So this is a leg. This is a leg. And what's this side? Yeah, this is the hypotenuse. So leg and leg, so these are A and B, and this is going to be C. So if you want to put A, B, C next to it, you want to do that too. Any sort of annotations are really, really helpful for these. So we know that A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So here's A and B. It doesn't matter which way you do it. It could be B or A, because when you add, you get the same number, like 2 plus 1, same as 1 plus 2. So I'm going to go 3 squared plus 4 squared. So leg A squared plus B squared equals hypotenuse, which is x squared. So I first label my right triangle. Now I'm going to write my Pythagorean theorem. Now I'm going to solve for x. Well, how do we do that? Okay. This is not 3 times 2. No. This is 3 times 3. Whenever you square something, you multiply it by itself twice. So 3 squared is 3 times 3. 4 squared is 4 times 4. X squared is x times x, etc. So this is not 6. This is 3 times 3. This is 9. This is 4 times 4. 4 squared, which is 16, equals x squared. Write that down with me. Whoop. Okay, next, add 9 plus 16, which is 25. X squared. Okay, so now it's asking what number times itself is 25. What number times itself is 25? Well, that's 5, right? Because 5 times 5 is 25. So the answer here is 5. But if you didn't know that, then what's the opposite of squaring a number? That's the square root. So squaring and square root are opposites. So that means that those go away and you just have x. So squaring and square root are opposites. And the square root of 25, what number times itself is 25? That is 5. And so we have 5 right here. The hypotenuse is always the longest side. And so you have to check your answer. So it has to be bigger than 3 and 4. If this were 2, I know I messed it up somewhere because the hypotenuse has to be the longest side. A little note to myself just to make sure I remember that. Hypotenuse is the longest side. Well, let's try another one. Example 2. If you think you're good, you can try it on your own. Pause the video. What do you get? Ooh, okay, let's try it. So this is, I don't know, let's call this leg A, this leg B, this hypotenuse is going to be C, opposite the right angle. So it doesn't matter which one you put, A or B. This is a leg, this is a leg, this is the hypotenuse. Bam. So I'm going to set up 12 squared plus 5 squared. If I did 5 squared plus 12 squared, I get the same thing. But it's important that the hypotenuse is always after the equal sign. So that's x squared right there. Okay. So 12 times 12 is 144. 5 times 5, we just talked about that, is 25. 5 squared is 25, x squared. 144 plus 25 is 169 equals x squared. Oh, square root. If you don't know, you can use your calculator. Or if you have your phone, if you turn the phone this way, it has more options for you where you can find the square root. Second square root, 169. What number times itself is 169? That is 13. 13 times 13 is 169. Is the hypotenuse the biggest side? Is 13 bigger? Yep, 13 is bigger than 5 and 12. Cool. That's a good check. Nice job. Let's keep it going. Boom. All right, example 3, write this one down. Ooh, looks a little different. Notice what's different? Ooh, yeah, you have a leg you're trying to find. So let's call this A, this B, and then hypotenuse, opposite the right angle, is C. Leg, leg, hypotenuse. There you go. So now my equation is going to be x squared plus 9 squared equals hypotenuse squared, 11 squared. So this is where it's a little different. So now the x is over here because I'm finding a leg, I'm not finding the hypotenuse. So you have to make sure you label and figure out what the hell you're trying to find first before you start in this step, because you have to make sure that here I'm finding a leg and I'm not finding the hypotenuse, so the x goes here rather than here. That's what's different. So now let's solve. Whoop! X squared plus 9 times 9 is 81. That ain't 18. That's not 9 times 2. No, no, no. 11 times 11 is 121. Okay, subtract 81. So x squared, 81 minus 81 is 0. So that goes away. 121 minus 81 is 40. Okay, so I don't know a number up from the top of my head that times itself is 40, but I know that I can square root it. Because square root and squaring are opposites, so that means that they go away. And then the square root of 40, I think that's an irrational number. Let's see. Yeah, so it's some crazy decimal that goes on forever, unpredictable, it means irrational, so I'm just going to leave it like this, and that's a cool answer. So the square root of 40, which actually is 6.322, which is less than 11, which is good, because 11 has to be the biggest side, because 11 is the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is always the biggest side. Cool. Try this one. Example 4, what do you get? Woo! Let's try it. Oh my goodness, it's upside down. So this, notice that arrow I draw, is called the hypotenuse. There we go. So that means this is a leg, because it makes up the right angle. There you go. So what am I trying to find here? I'm trying to find the leg. So it could be A or B, it doesn't matter. Let's call this A, this B, just to show you something different. It doesn't matter. So 22 squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse, opposite the right angle, 25 squared. So sometimes they're going to try and mess with you and make the right triangle look a little different, but don't worry. Always identify the hypotenuse first. You're going to be good. Okay, 22 squared. 22 times 22, or 22 squared. Write both in your calculator like that. So it's 484 plus x squared equals 25 squared 625 minus 484. X squared 625 minus 484 is 141. I can't think of a number on the top of my head that times itself as 141, so I'm going to square root both sides. So square rooting both sides, so that goes away. So x equals, what is the square root of 141? Oh, it's irrational. So it's like 11.87 something. So I'm going to leave it like this. 11.87 is less than 25. 25's hypotenuse, got to be the biggest side. Yeah, okay, cool. Got it. Nice job. Okay, good work. Let's go on to some practice now.